There is a contract already signed in your name. Not with ink, not with paperwork, not with anything this world would recognize as legal. But it is more binding than any agreement ever drawn up in any court, in any century, on any continent. And most people who call themselves believers, people who pray, people who fast, people who beg, have never once enforced it. That changes today. Because what you are about to hear is not motivation. It is not theology dressed up in modern language. It is a spiritual reality so precise, so ancient, and so radically misunderstood that the moment it clicks inside you, nothing about how you see money, provision, and your own life will ever be the same. You were not born into scarcity. You were born into a finished transaction. And somewhere along the way, someone convinced you to stand outside the door of what is already yours, knocking, begging, wondering if you were worthy enough to enter. You were not taught about the covenant. You were taught about the struggle. You were handed religion when you needed revelation. You were given a prayer when you needed a legal standing. There is a difference between asking a king for something and reminding a court of law what already belongs to you. Most of us have been doing the former our entire lives. This is an invitation into the latter. Think about the last time you prayed about money, about provision, about a breakthrough. What was the posture of that prayer? Was it confident? Or was there a quiet, almost invisible undercurrent of doubt, a wondering if this time it would actually work, if you had been good enough, consistent enough, faithful enough to deserve the answer? That posture, that invisible trembling, is not a faith problem. It is an identity problem. You did not know who you were in relation to the covenant, and when you do not know your legal standing, you do not walk like someone who has rights. You walk like someone hoping for grace. Grace is real, but so is inheritance. And inheritance does not require your performance. It requires your identity. I want you to sit with something for a moment. Have you ever felt that quiet, persistent ache, not quite desperation, but something close, where it feels like abundance is always one step ahead of you, like you are perpetually in the waiting room of a breakthrough that never quite arrives, like something is blocking you that you cannot name, that no amount of hard work or prayer seems to fully remove? If you have felt that, write it in the comments. Not because you need to confess something, but because you are not alone. And sometimes the most powerful thing is to simply say, I felt that too. Because that ache is not evidence that God has forgotten you. It is evidence that you have been operating under a frequency that does not match who you actually are. Now here is where the story shifts. Several thousand years ago, in a world that operated entirely on covenant law, there was a practice that most modern people have filtered out of their theology because it makes them uncomfortable. It was called the blood covenant, and it was not a ritual of religion. It was a legal agreement, binding, irreversible, and enforced by the most powerful mechanism that ancient civilization understood: the shedding of blood. When two parties entered a blood covenant, everything changed. Their assets became shared. Their debts were absorbed. Their enemies became each other's enemies. Their resources became each other's resources. The covenant was not symbolic. It was transactional in the deepest possible sense. Now here is what most people never truly reckon with. The cross was not just a sacrifice. It was a covenant transaction, the most complete, final, and legally binding covenant ever executed in the history of all creation. The bloodshed there did not simply cover sin. It transferred status. It transferred access. It transferred identity. It transferred inheritance. When that covenant was sealed, the finished work, and those words matter, the finished work, created a legal document in the spiritual dimension, a document that lists you by name as an heir, not a beggar, not a supplicant, not a probationary recipient, an heir. Heirs do not ask if they are allowed to have the inheritance. They claim it. They enforce it. They walk into what is theirs because the covenant says they can. This is not prosperity gospel. This is covenant law. There is a difference. Prosperity gospel says, If you believe hard enough and give enough money to the right person, God will make you rich. That is manipulation wearing a spiritual costume. Covenant law says, there is a finished agreement that has already authorized your provision. The question is not whether God will provide. The question is whether you will operate at the frequency of what has already been done. That word, frequency, is where the quantum dimension enters. Modern physics has uncovered something that the ancient world described in entirely different language. Everything that exists is vibration. Everything is frequency. The table, the air, the thought you are having right now, all of it is energy in motion, and quantum mechanics has demonstrated something extraordinary and deeply unsettling to the materialist worldview. The observer affects the outcome. The state of the one watching collapses the wave of possibility into a specific, physical reality. What does this mean in the context of the covenant? It means that your inner frequency, your identity, your self-perception, your spiritual standing is not a passive condition. It is an active force. It is the observer, and it is constantly collapsing the infinite field of quantum possibility into the specific, tangible experience you are living right now. When you vibrate at the frequency of lack, when your inner world carries the signature of unworthiness, scarcity, and doubt, you are collapsing the quantum field toward lack, not because God is withholding, not because the covenant is inactive, but because your frequency is not aligned with what the covenant has already authorized. This is why two people can read the same scripture about abundance, pray the same prayer, attend the same service, and have completely different financial realities. One has activated their covenant frequency. The other is still vibrating at the residue of their old identity. The blood covenant is not just a spiritual fact. It is a quantum signature. It is an imprint on the fabric of reality that says, this person is an heir. This person has rights. This person's access to provision has been pre-authorized at the highest possible level. The activation is not complicated, but it is profound. It is the moment you stop operating from the consciousness of lack and begin operating from the consciousness of inheritance. The moment you stop asking, will it come? And start asking, why am I not receiving what is already mine? The moment your prayer stops sounding like a plea and starts sounding like an enforcement. Enforcement is not arrogance. It is covenant knowledge. When a soldier in ancient times carried the seal of a king into a foreign territory, they did not apologize for what that seal authorized. They did not wonder if the king still meant it. They did not whisper the decree, they declared it. And the authority of the covenant behind that seal opened doors, moved armies, released resources. You carry a seal, the most powerful seal in existence. And most of the time, you are holding it down at your side, wondering if it still counts. It counts. The blood made sure of that. If what you are hearing is resonating, not just intellectually, not just emotionally, but somewhere deeper, in that place where truth lands before your mind can filter it, let that be your quiet yes. Let the like be your agreement. Not with me, but with the truth of what you already carry. And I want to mention something here, because it matters to me that this is not just something you hear and forget. There is a journal, the Quantum Wealth Scripture Journal, that I created specifically for people who are ready to move beyond inspiration into activation. 30 days of Bible-aligned quantum wealth activations. Scripture, reflection, and practical money moves woven together into a daily practice that is designed to recalibrate your frequency from the inside out. It is not a devotional, it is a covenant blueprint. The link is in the description and in the first comment. If this message is landing, that journal is the next step. Now let us go deeper. The reason most believers never fully walk in covenant prosperity is not lack of faith. It is lack of identity alignment. They believe in the covenant abstractly, the way you might believe that a large inheritance exists somewhere in the legal system with your name on it. But they have never gone through the process of actually claiming it, presenting the documentation, and receiving the transfer. The process of claiming a spiritual inheritance has a specific anatomy. First, there is recognition. You must see yourself as the heir, not as the sinner hoping to be tolerated, not as the servant waiting for the master's permission. The heir, the one whose name is on the covenant document. This is not about deserving. No one deserves an inheritance. It is granted by the giver. The work has been done. The question is only whether you will step into the identity that the covenant created. Second, there is frequency calibration. This is where the quantum principle becomes operational in daily life, because your thoughts are not just electrical impulses, they are frequencies, the thoughts you habitually return to, the self-narratives you carry, the emotional charge attached to the idea of money, provision, and worth. All of these are broadcasting a signal, and that signal is either aligned with the covenant frequency or it is not. Aligning your frequency is not wishful thinking. It is the most practical spiritual work you will ever do. Third, there is declaration. Ancient covenant practice always involved spoken words, the decree, the declaration, not because words are magic spells, but because declaration is the act of bringing your inner reality into the external dimension. When you speak what the covenant says about your provision, not as a performance, but as an officer of the court reading the ruling, something shifts. In the quantum field, in your own nervous system, in the atmosphere around you. Fourth, there is expectation without attachment. This is perhaps the most nuanced principle in the entire framework. Expectation is covenant confidence. You know the provision is coming because the agreement is binding. Attachment is fear wearing the costume of desire. You grip the outcome because some part of you still does not fully trust the covenant. The heir, who is secure in their inheritance, does not spend every waking moment obsessing over when the transfer will arrive. They live from the certainty that it is already done. And that certainty, that settled quality in their inner world, is itself a quantum attractor. This is why Jesus, when he spoke about provision, did not speak with anxiety. He spoke with settled authority. Consider the lilies. Look at the birds. Your Father knows what you need. Not will know. Knows. Present tense. The covenant is present tense. The finished work is now. The quantum field does not recognize past or future in the way the linear mind does. It responds to the frequency of now. Your now matters more than your history. Whatever financial history you carry, the failures, the debt, the years of trying and not quite arriving, that history is not your quantum signature unless you keep choosing it as your frequency. The covenant has a different story about you, and the quantum field will respond to whichever story you hold with the most consistent emotional charge. This is where spiritual discipline and quantum awareness meet. Not in the sense of performing rituals or forcing positivity, but in the deeper sense of choosing, moment by moment, to operate from the identity of the covenant rather than the residue of the past. You are not trying to attract abundance from a position of lack. You are enforcing an inheritance from a position of rights. There is a version of you that already lives in that reality, not a fantasy version, not a someday version, a version that exists right now in the quantum field as a fully real possibility, waiting to be collapsed into physical experience by the frequency of your belief. The cross collapsed every spiritual barrier between that version of you and this version of you. The only remaining collapse is yours. Now there is something I want to say carefully, because I think it is important. This channel exists because there are people walking around with more spiritual authority than they have ever been told they carry. People who have been given religion as a substitute for revelation. People who pray with power, but live with doubt. People who know the scripture, but do not yet know how to make it operational in their actual financial lives. If that is you, this is your space. Not because I have all the answers, but because we are on this discovery together. And every week there is another layer, another dimension, another doorway into what the covenant actually means for the life you are living right now. If that matters to you, stay. Subscribe not as a transaction, but as a declaration that you are part of a community of people who are done with surface-level spirituality and ready for the real thing. And if you want to go deeper, if you want to be part of something even more intimate, members of this channel get early access to videos before they are released publicly, and there are layers of this conversation that we only open in that space. It is a small thing, practically, but it is a meaningful one, a way of saying, this matters to me. This is a worthy investment of my alignment. Every covenant has witnesses. This one is being witnessed right now, by you, by this moment, by the part of you that recognized something true when this video began. You felt it in the first 30 seconds, did you not? That sense that this was not random, that something in you was already leaning toward this before you even pressed play. That is not coincidence. That is frequency. That is the covenant reaching into the quantum field and collapsing the wave, not toward information, but toward activation. Your wealth is not coming. Your wealth is already authorized. The question is not whether the inheritance is real. The question is whether you will stop standing at the edge of it, respectful, patient, humble to the point of poverty, and walk in. The blood made it legal. The quantum field made it responsive. Your identity makes it operational. This is not a new idea you are learning. This is an ancient truth you are remembering. And the person sitting across from you, the one you pass every day, the one you love, the one who is still begging for what was already signed over to them, they need to hear this too. Send this to them, not because you want them to watch a video, but because some messages are not meant to stay with one person. Some truths travel. Some revelations are meant to land in lives you cannot even see from where you are standing. The covenant is not exclusive. The quantum field is not running out. There is enough activation, enough abundance, enough inheritance for every person who chooses to receive it. Share this, because someone you know is standing at a door they do not know is already open. And the moment they step through, everything changes.